ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ
Okay. All right. So I guess in the previous classes we had gone over the effects of having our own viewpoints and some of the advantages. But without that thing, we probably had some idea of it and also went through this slide that you're seeing. Just to summarize, so we have been losing our own categories because we have a worldview that has actually been imposed upon us, and that is our epistemic lens, right? So for that, what is it that we need to do? So we got to have our own viewpoint, but which one? So we have about 6 darshanas. I'll have a very brief overview for all those 6 darshanas. But most importantly, the reason we are doing it is to get the categories from our own viewpoint, our own darshanas. And then, whenever you talk about a viewpoint, a drishti is always associated with a bhava which in this context I mean psychology. Um, so, what is our view of the world and what is our view of what mind is, right? So we need to have a philosophy or a viewpoint on how to look at people and how to look at their emotions and how to look at their justifications, right? So we need a model for that thing, and we do have it. And what is our darshan on that one? And then when it comes to education, so we do have the philosophy of education, and it is shaped by all these darshanas. And most importantly, from the Vedantic viewpoint, what's the Upanishadic viewpoint, how the philosophy of education should be. So laws and ethics, that's our Dharma Shastras, and society and governance, it's also covered in Dharma Shastras. Language and culture, as you know, you know, Sanskrit being the base language for all of our uh, Indic humanities, so to speak, and the derived vocabulary will also be extremely useful that are actually available in all the native languages that we have, and the spiritual worldview. So, the advantages, we will have proper categories without losing them, and so that the native ideas are getting forced into foreign molds. So we, instead of using dharma, you see many texts are talking about religion, which is, we don't really have a word called, or even the meaning of religiosity for that matter. And so what happens is the dependent on the borrowed knowledge that we have been using, and including the language that I'm speaking in, right? And so mostly when it comes to an internal conflict, because of using the imposed languages, imposed categories, uh, you really don't have the right vocabulary, or the kind of internal conflict that we see from the practices versus what is outside. So youth are being ashamed of the tradition, mental conflict with modern and native values. So which results in inverted cognition or some kind of a dissonance. You don't know what to explain, but you've been practicing it, you like it, but you're very ashamed of justifying or even practicing uh, whatever the traditional values that you hold dear to your heart. And emphasis on rote memorization without cultural meaning is very much common, which is, because at some point you have to value what you practice, and without any meaning whatsoever, be it in native language or in Sanskrit. When you don't know the language, so you just have to memorize, or you got to practice. So that results in jnana and karma virodha. So there is a conflict between knowledge and action. And what kind of an educated individual would that be, right? So most of the effects that you're seeing are because a foreign cultural lens has been imposed upon us, and with or without knowing, we've been using it. So alienation from the tradition and also the confusion in the metaphysical categories are resulting in it. So we've been using words like soul, sin, heaven, all of those things with no real one-to-one mapping, but we've been using it anyways because we don't have probably even if there is an overlapping meaning, we have been using all of them. And that actually results in misunderstanding our own darshanas. Okay. But in this context, in this presentation, we'll be slowly switching away, from all these words that we've been using for decades. But soul throughout this presentation, you might hear the word soul, which actually means the mind for a Bharatiya Tattva Drushti, or the viewpoint from our own Indic lens. When we say soul, we actually mean mind, right? And definitely, but at some point it can mean ego. At some point it can mean the the ultimate self, or the self with a capital S. So bear with me for a few slides on this thing. But when we say soul, we actually mean atma, until a certain when we switch it, we're going to be switching it completely from jiva, atma, and paramatma. Until then, bear with us for soul, sin, and heaven. But so this darshana brahma that is going to occur is because we've been conditioned that way. All right. So dharmic ethics will emphasize contextual universality. That is, everyone has access to dharma, though duties differ. There's no blanket exclusion of outsiders. Conflict is not based on disbelief, but on conduct. The goal is harmony with Rita, not ideological conformity. So when you say adharma, they're all talking about not being in conformance with reality and not rules. So some of the tantras that we will be using in order to study the outsider is simply based on what we've been practicing from the ancient times to the five tantras that you might have heard of. That is how to break friendships. So that is called mitra bheda. How friendships are gained, mitra labha, and kako lukiyam, on war and peace strategies. So that is kaka, uluka. Kaka means crow, and uluka is what's the English word for? Yeah, owl.
Owl.
Right, owl. Yeah. So there are stories based on that, and it's called on war and peace. Right. Labdha pranasha. Labdha is what is gained, and pranasha how you lose it. And aparikshita karakam. Parikshitam, it is that which has been examined. Aparikshitam, that which has not been examined or not taught. Acting without thinking. So what are the results of it? So this this happens even on the opponent side, but how to make use of it and how to use it to your advantage. So these are strategies that have been taught even in the Panchatantra, which can actually be used, when it comes to polemic studies. Right. Okay. So Darshanas, I just wanted to know how many of you are already familiar with some of the darshanas? Sorry. Yeah. Would you like to go? Any of the darshanas, at least, briefly or in summary throughout the sessions that you've been attending?
Myself more on the Patanjali
Okay.
yoga
Uh,
darshana. That's how I started myself when I was really a young kid. So I've been in that path mostly.
and you've been practicing the sutras, or you just you heard somebody explaining the sutras? How is it like?
Mostly when I went to the yoga classes when I was in school,
Mhm.
that's when I got to follow this the process of um, yogic practices mostly, and then why things are being done, not necessarily from a sutra or more theory perspective, more from a practical perspective as to why you do certain things and how it's done.
Okay. Okay. So more on the Vyakhana side of things and not exactly going through the sutras. Yes.
That's
So,
correct.
okay. Here too, we won't be going through the sutras when we're talking about darshanas here. So this is more of an overview of all the Shad darshanas and the six darshanas that we have. And so when we take a position or a worldview, which worldview would be the best or that you have heard of so far? You got to take a minute. See, there are six darshanas, and that is six viewpoints, right? And so, can we have a viewpoint that is inclusive of all these viewpoints? And do we know when to use one? So, all darshanas, think of them as lenses. Right?
In that case, like the application of a darshana depends on the context, right?
Yeah.
So if you are more on the spiritual pursuit,
Mm,
then Sankhya or yoga would be applicable.
mhm,
And in a different context, for example, Nyaya may be applicable in a completely different
mhm.
context, like governance or or debate and things like that, right?
So, but yeah, but what you said is right. But how come you're right? Why is it that you know all the darshanakaras they formulated their darshanas saying that this actually gives you the ultimate bliss or the moksha, and but you quickly said that nyaya can be contextually used, this is contextually used. But how do you already know about this thing? Is it because you studied? Because you sort of intuitively know that this is limited
Mostly intuition.
intuitively? Okay. Is it because we hear more of Vedanta? But
Yes.
actually, yeah,
Yeah.
if you go back 2,000, years and look at it from their perspective, and think of them as having each darshanas and not really people, probably they did not have all the debates and did not declare Vedanta to be the winner, or maybe they do not practice as it is today. So, most of the traditions that we have, no one rejects Vedanta, at least as far as we know, right? I mean, when there are more people attending a Vedanta session today than a Nyaya session, or had you heard of Sankhya? Maybe 10 years back? No, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
No.
yeah, not. We did not know that it was this popular. But if you took Bhagavad Gita, it does introduce Sankhya. Okay. So these darshanas have been gaining popularity over time, and at some periods of time, it is said that some of the darshanas were predominant. We don't know the periods, but we do know that Mimamsa was extremely popular at some point. And you know, yoga was popular. Sankhya was very, very popular even before Buddha. So how well it was formulated? Did we have all of those texts and the vyakyanas, the karikas? We don't know all of those things, but I think from an essential essentials of darshanas, it does look like all these darshanas were pretty well developed and people were following it. And the followers claim that each darshana would take them to the goal of atyantika dukkha nivaranam. Whatever, so there is suffering, and this will come out of suffering by specific knowledge. For example, Vaisheshika. The very word Vaisheshika means it's related to Vishesha. Vishesha means specific or special, right? The founder was Kanada Maharshi, and the Vaisheshika Sutras are attributed to Kanada. So, what is in Vaisheshika and how we are studying it is because it gives us a peek into realities. What is reality? And what are the fundamental substances and qualities? Most fundamental substances and qualities. So, if you study all of these, then you understand reality. So, what exists, or what we call ontology, can be understood through Vaisheshika. And Nyaya, so the founder happens to be Gautama, not the Gautama of the Ramayana, but Akshapada Gautama, another Gautama, who composed Nyaya Sutras to establish whatever exists that should be known, but what is the right method of knowing them? And what if they can't be perceived directly by the senses? What method of inferencing would be valid? So that is formulated in the Nyaya Sutras. So Sankhya, the founder was Kapila Maharshi, and the first text on Sankhya is called that we have gotten. Probably it's of 8th or 9th century. People say some it is they're attributing to 5th or 6th centuries too, whichever it is. But what we have is Ishvara Krishna's Sankhya Karika. And if you go to Sankhya Karika, you have a very different method of teaching the subject. So everything is in terms of analogy. So what used to be the interesting thing was what used to be the sutras and the vyakyanas that you would find in the later times. Sankhya Karika, it's a karika that we have. We don't have Sankhya Sutras. So there is a difference between the two. So it is an explanation. Like there is sutra and an explanation. So what we have is more of karika type, and there are verses and there are analogies explaining Sankhya Sutras probably. And we don't have Sankhya Sutras in pristine form, but people have inferred and they have gotten, and which is quite reliable as what are the fundamentals of Sankhya. So that is the first time we do see that there is a distinction between consciousness and nature, Purusha and Prakriti. And 25 tattvas that should be understood in order to understand the world. There comes yoga. And yoga is what we talked about is Patanjali's Yoga Sutrani. And what's the main aim of the sutras is to implement the Sankhya philosophy in action. It's all about realizing the self through specific actions that are composed, and you might have seen all the padas and the other chapters in Patanjali and how they move towards from asana to liberation, or from the physical discipline to mental discipline, and then transcending the mind. So that is called the Prakriti Purusha Viveka, which is the main aim of yoga in order to practice and then liberate. So even Nyaya is to liberate, Vaisheshika is to liberate, Sankhya is to liberate, and Yoga is to liberate. Purva Mimamsa is a study of the Vedas. The sutras are composed by Jaimini, who was one of the disciples of Vyasa Maharshi, to establish dharma through ritual injunctions, yajnas, using the Vedic authority. Vedanta is what we call the um, the concluding portions of the Vedas, which is also called as Uttara Mimamsa. Mimamsa means Mantum Icha Mimamsa. In order to know it systematically. So that is Mimamsa. Uttara Mimamsa is the second part of the Vedas, or the concluding portions of the Vedas, which is also called the Jnana Kanda. And the sutras are composed by Badarayana Vyasa, and they are called Brahma Sutras. That is to realize the identity of Atma and Brahma, self and the super self. That's probably the right words. People use soul or super soul, which wasn't there. I think this is a modern word that they've coined, but that's okay. And when they say soul and super soul, they probably mean this thing. Okay. And
Mahodaya,
yeah,
I have a quick question. Out of the 6 darshanas, what is the most relatable or most common for
relate.
somebody who's completely not aware of anything? I'm
Yeah.
talking about based on different age groups in our society these days.
Yeah, different age groups and different mental dispositions and their aims, right? So everything matters, as we say, Sandarbha and Auchitya, which Chandra Modia talked about, which is the context. In certain contexts, it can be relatable. In certain contexts, they are not relatable. And for example, Vedanta. So you do have Vedanta. Can you name the type of Vedanta traditions that we have? Like
Upanishads?
Dvaita, Advaita,
Advaita.
Vishishta Advaita, and then so we got three philosophies based on Vedanta.
Bhakti?
Bhakti is I mean, everybody has bhakti as a marga. The actual philosophy.
Not sure. I'm not answering the question, but one other question is Karma Siddhanta, where would that map to?
Which one?
Karma Siddhanta.
Okay. That maps to, you can tell me here. So on the last 2 rows, one is Mimamsa and the other one is Purva Mimamsa, the other is Uttara Mimamsa. So the karma is the action. Action, rituals, actions, anything that is, it can be Nitya Karma, it can be Naimittika Karma, it can be Kamya Karma. Kamya Karma is an action that you do because of the desires that you have, needs or wants. And Nitya Karma, let's say I get up in the morning and I brush my teeth. That's also action. That is Nitya. I do doing the Sandhya, doing the Puja. So some are done for the body, and some are done for the mind. So they are Nitya karmas. And the other ones are Naimittika karma. So they all are included in Dharma Shastras, which are mostly, there are direct authoritative or imperatives that are said, okay, if you follow this thing, some are like, okay, you must do this anyway in order to survive. So for example, you have to eat in order to survive. Now if you eat, you'll survive. If you don't, you don't. So that's eating is part of the Nitya karmas anyways. All of these are Laukika karmas. We are talking about Mimamsa, the Purva Mimamsa, which actually talks about the ritualistic karmas. So when we say Laukika karmas and then how to sanctify it, all of that will come under Purva Mimamsa or Uttar Mimamsa. So it can be mapped to any of this, but I think you can imagine a solid line from the Mimamsa traditions, Purva or the Uttara.
Okay, thank you.
Gee, quick question. On the topic of Vedanta, there's only 3, right?
On the topic of Vedanta, no, there are many.
Okay, I'm only aware of 3.
Yeah, mainly 3. Yes, mainly 3. Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, and Dvaita. There is Shuddha Dvaita, Ashuddha Vishishtadvaita, and Dvaita Dvaita. All of those things. So, for example, the Nimbarkas, you know about Ramanuja, Madhva, Adi Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhva. And after that, you have Nimbarka, Vallabhacharya, and you have Chaitanya Parampara. So many of them. And they all are Vedantic, but their Siddhantas are different. But what we know, mainly 3, but there are many. There are certain branches of these 3, or different Dvaita of Chaitanya Parampara. That's different too. Even though there is, they lean more towards the Dvaita-based interpretation of Upanishads or the Vedanta. Okay.
What's the most common Vedantic practice, or the, it's a pretty tough question to answer, I think, because I've been trying to figure out, like,
Because when we say, people practice everything in terms of bhakti or the yoga today. I mean, yoga, bhakti mostly. And this bhakti tradition, if you go and ask a practitioner of bhakti, which Vedanta tradition you're following, they may not know. For example, let's say, who were most prominent here in the US. Let's say ISKCON people. So which marga they're following? It's bhakti, right?
right.
It's bhakti, right? And they say nama japa, right? Which is definitely lots and lots of work that have been done. And nama japa is what they do, because there is no differentiation between nama and the rupa for the ISKCON parampara, which is actually nothing but Chaitanya parampara. That is there's no differentiation between nama and the rupa, and it is identical to form, and form is ultimate. So that is nama rupa of Krishna. So it's a Vaishnava nama rupa. In practice, it's a bhakti movement, the bhakti marga, based on achintya bheda abheda tattva. There is bheda, differentiation, abheda, non-differentiation, but achintya, it is, you can't come to, it is inconceivable oneness and difference in terms of philosophy. That is the name of the philosophy. Okay, achintya bheda abheda tattva. But nobody talks to you about which, unless they have studied Chaitanya Charitamritam, or other Vyakhyanas of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati and all those acharyas, they may not know. But if you go to Krishna Matha here, so which Vedantic tradition are they following? So you would see a lot of bhajanams and those kind of things happening. That is bhakti again. But philosophy happens to be Dvaita Vedanta of Madhvacharya. And then you might walk to AHT or the Venkatesha temple here, and you would see Nalayara Divya Prabandham and Thiruvaramuri and those kind of things. which happen to be bhakti traditions. You would see them, all of them chanting, especially Dvaita and Vishishtha Dvaita parampara people. They all chant, Upanishadic verses and Vedas and all of that. But if you go to Venkateshwara temple and you see, the Urdhva Kundam, or what we call the white namas, and then there is a Sri Charanam. So that actually means it's a Sri Vaishnava parampara. Sri Vaishnava parampara following a Bhakti Marga of Vishishtadvaita tradition. Right? So, and then you also see priests or even the bhaktas who are there, having a vibhuti, right, going horizontally with a kumkum in the middle. So that is a smarta parampara following Advaita tradition, but still practicing bhakti. So what I mean, in practice, bhakti doesn't look different. There may be very subtle differences. In practice, you won't know until you know, or you ask the followers, a knowledgeable follower, what are they following. Until then, you won't know it. But if you were to ask who are the people that I see most, you see mostly Vaishnavas or Smartas or traditions. But they both follow different philosophies. The methods of worship also differs a little bit, but you can say that they're all following Bhakti traditions from their own paramparas, having different philosophies. Does it answer your question?
Yes, G.
Okay. And you see Krishna and Radha being worshipped. But prior to 12th century, you wouldn't have heard of that thing, actually. Isn't that surprising? You see, so Krishna Radha is more, Krishna Radha worship is in practice more after 12th century, especially after Jayadeva. Jayadeva's Gita Govinda. And that's interesting too. So which tradition followed them more? On the Bengal side, actually, on the Orissa side, it was Chaitanya Parampara that had the practice of Krishna and Radha worship a lot more. Yeah. And then it became so popular, now almost every tradition follows it, right? Krishna and Radha worshipped. Okay. Where was yes, yeah. Nyaya. So,
Rohit Ji has a question, I think.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, Srinidhi, one question more. So in the Vedanta, it's mainly about achieving Brahman, where you don't see a difference between your Atman and the Brahman, and you see yourself to be the part of it. And one part of that is through Vedanta, which has Bhakti Yoga as a movement, where we should categorize if someone is achieving the divinity through their art form. For example, it can be a dance form, it can be through a painting. Where does it fit into this entire puzzle?
Oh, I mean, it could be anything, right? So, see, in practice, you're saying, okay, there is for example, Tyagaraja. Somebody is, are you familiar with Tyagaraja, Modi?
Yeah, it's a singing form.
Yeah, Tyagaraja Kirtanam, right? And so in their songs, and they're all bhakti songs, but in their songs, you would see a lot of Advaita. So the Sahitya can be pointing towards the philosophy. But have you heard of Purandaradasa Kirtanas?
No.
Purandaradasa is considered the Pitamaha of Carnatic music. And his writings, if you observe the Sahitya, the lyrics, they're totally pointing to Dvaita philosophy, because he was a practitioner practitioner of Madhya Parampara, which is Dvaita. Okay, so it depends. They could be following through a marga, they obtain their bliss or whatever. But the philosophy could be anything. So therefore, there is really no. You look at the marga and then say through this marga they achieved moksha, but you can't pinpoint and then say, at least from a layman's perspective, oh, because of this philosophy he reached it. Now, can we say, no? Do we say Purandaradasa reached Vaikunta? People say yes. Vaikunta is reached, and through this practice of bhakti, no one say, oh, it is through Dvaita he did achieve. But there are certain parampara, they may say that thing. Okay? So where can you map them to? You can map them to all the Vedanta based paramparas.
Understood. So if I got you correctly, it's mainly the inspiration can come from any way, and it is hard to map. But more important is they will be categorized into one form of Vedanta itself.
Absolutely, yeah. So most popular academically is Advaita today. If you go to Sam Altman's tweets, and then I think it was in 2021, he answered the question. So, what is the most interesting question that you have heard, in which you, or the most interesting answer that you believe is true, which probably AI hasn't answered, or AI not explored from the point of view of AI? That was back in 2021. He said the absolute equivalence of Atman and Brahman, the exact words. So you can find the tweet even to this day. That is Sam Altman. So what is popular as a philosophy? And I think as a philosophy, Advaita is popular. Because Advaita is somewhat understood in the world as, oh, the divine and I are separate. That we are separate now, we are separate eternally. That is what most of the traditions hold. Right? That they're all Dvaita. Even Vishishtadvaita is considered Dvaita, though. I mean, how do they say that? Aham Brahmasmi, for example. That's a Mahavakya. Aham is I, Brahma is pure consciousness, Asmi. Right? Aham Brahmasmi. So now there's no separation between Jiva and the Brahma. Jivo Brahma Ivana Paraha. Jiva and the Brahman are non-different. Right? So this is Advaita position. And same Bhagavad Gita says, Mama eva amsho jiva bhuta sanatana. So they're all my parts only, my amshas only. So declares Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, which actually, the jivas are part of the Brahma. So that is Tattvamasi Mahavakya is taken, and then it said, okay, Tat Tvam Asi, that you are, is Advaita. Tasya Tvam Asi, you are part of that, is Vishishtadvaita. Same Tattvamasi was interpreted is Atattwamasi. He borrowed, Madhvacharya borrowed the from the previous verse, or the word, where it was ending, and then interpreted as Atattwamasi, which you are not that. So you can see Madhvacharya's symbol as two, that is Jiva and the Brahma being different. So same Tattvamasi Mahavakya is taken, and same Mahavakya is interpreted according to three drishtis, or three Vedantic traditions.
Gee, question on that part. Is that the reason for the Nama having sort of the significance of the Nama?
Yeah.
And the way is that what it means?
Yes. I mean, the Namas, and not entirely, because you could ask, okay, there are practices of some Sri Charanam by Sri Vaishnavas and Sad Vaishnavas, or the Madhva traditions have a what you call Gopi Chandran, right? So the Nama directly doesn't map to philosophies, and a lot more things are included. And it could be sampradayas. There are different variations on how nama is put. There is Tengale nama, there is Vatagale nama, and those kind of things, which do represent philosophies as well as practices or their sampradayas too. Of course, their symbolic meanings are many. But is philosophy, is philosophy one of the meanings of symbolism? Yes.
Yeah, because I think that's where I'm trying to relate folks that it's part of, I guess, the loose word will be a traditional way of representing something, but they all have meanings.
Oh, absolutely.
They all have meanings. So I'm trying to connect the dots.
They don't have just one meaning. I mean, meanings can be many. There is something called abhida, direct meaning. There is something called as lakshana, indicative meaning. There is something called as vyanjana, which is not only indirect but something beyond the direct and indirect meaning, but it's the intended meaning. So there are different meanings, for every symbol. Sometimes the symbols happen to be just rudi or practice. Right? Yes, there's not one meaning, but we're not going over that thing because symbolism is not part of this thing. They are there in every tradition, but we are focusing mostly on the philosophy itself. So what does Nyaya say? So Nyaya says, oh, the world is real. The perceivable world is real, and objects can be known through pramans. So this is where Chandra Modiya had actually sort of intuitively grasped. Yes, Nyaya is more. I mean, I can use Nyaya contextually. Yes, you can. Is that their viewpoint? Not really. Gautama's viewpoint is that through Nyaya you achieve moksha. Okay, and Vaisheshika. So Vaisheshika through Kanada, Padartha Jnana Deva Moksha, meaning you study what exists and pursue them, you achieve moksha. And then the Sankhya, there is Purusha and Prakriti. So in a way, it doesn't differentiate between types of consciousnesses like Brahman and Jiva and that kind of thing. He says there is Purusha and there is Prakriti. Okay. Consciousness in contact with Prakriti is what Sankhya is going to be talking about. Moksha, the yoga is, everything in Sankhya is accepted, and it's a method to discipline the chitta, or the chitta sanskara, what we call the storage with mental impressions, a memory with impressions, and cleansing it. Now, achieving the Shuddha Chitta is the practice of yoga, where liberation is possible. Mimamsa holds Veda is eternal. Dharma exists independently of Ishvara. That's interesting, isn't it? So they consider Veda to be an apaurusheya, meaning it is not written. It's revelatory, and it exists independently of Ishvara. So why is it that important? And that actually led to a debate with Vedantins, with the Nyaya. All these traditions had their own meaning. Probably this is what Buddhism opposed in the beginning. Opposed in the sense philosophically, and even Adi Shankara debated a Mimamsakara, Purva Mimamsaka. Do you recall the name? Who?
Mandana Mishra?
Mandana Mishra, yes. Mandana Mishra was a nephew of Kumarila Bhatta. So Adi Shankara goes to debate the Mimamsakas, which were very popular in those times. And Mimamsakas, one of the greatest Mimamsakas that ever lived, was actually a contemporary. It is said that he was a contemporary of Adi Shankara, and that was Kumarila Bhatta, who had joined the Nalanda University, learned a lot about Buddhism from Dharmapala, and he wrote a treatise in order to critique Buddhism, and he learned it But he had lied to his teachers while joining because Buddhism was more dominant. He had joined only to do a Purva Paksha. And then he was studied. It is said that he was cursed by his, because of intense guilt that he had, because it becomes a Guru Droha. If you lie to a Guru, he underwent self-immolation. Right? You would see that in the movie Adi Shankara too. And actually, Adi Shankara approaches Kumarila Bhatta in order to debate. Kumarila Bhatta says, and I can't debate you because, I have to go away. And I have done Guru Droha and I don't want to live. Right? So this is the, because I have done this Guru Droha and I must self-immolate. So this is the kind of action. So either dharma or dharma. I lied and it is not correct and I have to undergo self-immolation. So this was the Mimamsaka position. Right? Nothing to do with Ishvara. It's all about following dharma or not following dharma. I lied, therefore I have to go for prayashchitta. Therefore, I can't do this. You go and debate my nephew, that is Mandana Mishra. And Adi Shankara goes to Mandana Mishra, debates him and defeats him in front of his wife, Udaya Bharati. That story you know. And then firmly establishes Advaita Parampara, and with Mandana Mishra later becomes Sureshwaracharya. Right? And that's the story of Advaita Parampara. And so Vedanta holds that Brahman alone is ultimately real. So, and here too, there are classifications, which we mentioned. Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishta Advaita. Right? Vishishta Advaita and the Dvaita holds its dependent reality. World, the Laukika world is a dependent reality. Whereas Advaita, considers dependent reality as part of Vyavaharika, Pratibhasika, but at the level of Paramarthika, it does not even exist. Okay. So what pramanas are accepted? Pramanas are the means of knowing what exists and what is valid. In the Nyaya traditions, we have Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, and Shabda. So you probably know what it is briefly, and that's fine. So what you will see here is some of the darshanas hold some of the pramanas, and some darshanas hold many pramanas as valid. And for example, Vaisheshika holds Pratyaksha Anumana, Sankhya Pratyaksha Anumana. Shabda means Aptavakya or Vedas. Aptavakya is the expert knowledge. Veda is the canon of the Vedic literature, canons of the Vedic literature. Yoga, Pratyaksha Anumana. Shabda, which is same as Sankhya and the Mimamsa, are 6 pramanas, just like the Vedanta. And because of the Mimamsa contributions to these pramanas, including the Veda pramanas, the Vedanta followers, we don't have a lot of Mimamsa followers because it's somewhat included today. You can actually map Mimamsa even to certain tantric traditions. And all of them hold 6 pramanas. We'll go over them at a later stage. And
Gee, there was a question from Chandraji.
yes, ma'am.
So, Nasadiya Sukta, the creation, right? Is it more influenced by the Vaisheshika Darshana?
Nasadiya Sukta, not, see, Vedas are not influenced by, but influencing.
Oh, okay.
Right? There are Sankhya, well, people say, Sankhya verses are there in Vedas, so are Nyaya verses, or Vishishtadvaita, Advaita, and all of those things, right? So they all attribute to these verses, and Nasadiya Sukta is very famous because it asks some of the most fundamental questions. Whether Ishvara knows when the world began or not. Right? So the idea of personal God creating, that is negated there. as a Nasadiya Sukta. And you can see all of these Dvaita, Advaita, Vishitta, Advaita Paramparas too. When it comes to Srishti, when it comes to Prakriti, the Chaitanya and the Jada are considered eternal, especially in Vishitta, Advaita, and Dvaita Paramparas, right? The inert matter is also eternal. Okay. So, what is the spiritual orientation of these? Nyaya. So, all they're saying is mithya jnana nivritti, meaning removal of false knowledge. So, that will give you liberation. Vaisheshika. Padartha jnanadeva moksha. If you understand reality and all these padarthas, the existence that we have categorized, you achieve freedom. Sankhya. Through Vivek, Kaivalya Vivek. What is, Purusha Prakriti Vivek. If you know what is consciousness and what is matter, you would achieve moksha or the Kaivalya. The yoga tradition holds that, oh, if you hold yourself in samadhi, so that samadhi itself is realization of purusha, the moksha. The Mimamsa traditions, their view of moksha is different. You accumulate the merits of implementing dharma, and once you fulfill it, you get swargadireva praptihi. Swargadireva praptihi is moksha, because Vedas talk about swargas and narakas, right? So achieving the swarga is mimamsakas. That is their bliss. Vedanta realizes the non-dual Brahma realization. Okay, now whether one is separate or different, that is different. Right? Non-dual Brahma is the Advaita, and dualistic view, Dvaita. Qualified dualism or Vishishta Advaita is Vishishta Advaita. Okay, I am part of the divine. So that realization. So these are their spiritual orientations. So what is the example in daily life? And this is where the contextual mapping is important. So when we are saying, oh, there is fire because I see smoke. And yatra yatra dhumaha tatra tatra vanhihi is one of the classic sentences of Nyaya. There is fire because I see smoke, that inferential knowledge. When we are doing that thing, very systematically it has been expositioned by Nyaya. So when Chandramodaya says that it is, it can be, all these darshanas can be contextually used, yes, absolutely. And contextual usage is what we are taking, and that is the view of Vedanta. Whether we declare or not, but when we are using when we are making use of all these darshanas contextually, that is a Vedantic position. Vaisheshika is recognizing a pot as simply a clay in shape. What it matters is you look at the world and simply get it as a modification of matter. So the forms are different, but substance is same. There can be a gold bangle, there can be a gold jewelry, there can be a gold necklace, but the AU, the essence, the goldness, is the fundamental substance, right? So knowing the Dravya, Guna, and the Rupa. So the Vaisheshika gives an excellent viewpoint that, but it's all materialistic, as you can see. Sankhya helps you. I mean, it has a very systematic philosophy to be implemented through yoga, right? And it's all about, if you keep watching your emotions, all these emotions are never permanent. Not a single emotion is permanent. They rise, they fall. Oh, this is not the same person. Yesterday I felt very sad watching this movie, but today I'm not feeling sad watching the same movie. How come? The emotions have changed, but I did not change. I, so in Bhagavad Gita, it talks about you have been the same irrespective of the changing bodies. You had an infant's body, you had a toddler's body, you had a youthful body, Arjuna. Now you have an adult's body, and you will have an old man's body. See, you keep changing the body in your own experience, but you don't change. Your body changes. So what you possess is different from who you are. So don't confuse between the two, right? So this is Sankhya Yoga, and then that is the entry point to Bhagavad Gita itself. Mimamsa, yoga of Patanjali tradition, right? Mind becomes silent during deep absorption. So we talked about bhakti margas, we talked about nada margas and all of that. Is someone asking a question?
Yes, G. Quick question. You mentioned about the Bhagavad Gita about the you, and then you remains the same.
Yeah.
It's just through time you're changing.
Yeah.
In sort of like how you recognize
Experience.
yourself and how other people, right? Yeah. So on that part, the common question that I always get is like soulmate. I get this question all the time. It's the Atman. That's what you mentioned early in the class, is the soul, as we loosely throw around.
Yeah.
Is understood as the Atman is the true meaning, right? So the Atmic friend is what a soulmate is.
Not that. Soulmate is simply your mental dispositions aligned. You are a doctor, she is a doctor, and you have certain values, but you know, so when you mentioned how you are an artist, she also mentioned she's an artist, and then you have that connection, that intuitive connection, and that likability is what people refer to as soulmate, and that has nothing to do with what we're saying.
Okay, Dhanyawad. It's just like the way it's interpreted. That's why I wanted to kind of clarify in my own mind.
Certain qualities of Laukika matched, and I'll have a feeling that I might have a comfortable and a more pleasant life with this person. Yeah, I mean, it is said that why, if it's a soulmate, if it has to be an Atmic connection deep somewhere there, why are you finding your soulmates only in your geography, in your college, in your neighborhood? It's not like you found somebody in Siberia all of a sudden. So it is very much Laukika. It is very much Desha Kala Bandha. It is in time and space. It is mostly associated with who you meet. And it's all about proximity.
Mahoday, so we'll continue the session next week. So now we will take the Q&A, and before that, we'll end the recording.
Yeah. So
I'll go with the Shanti mantra.
Okay.
Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Paschantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
So any questions?